Miss Gillespie. I have to tell you, I'm inspired by the liturgical dancers and by Christopher. I was sitting here and I was thinking that, what I prepared for the night to speak to you about is something that obviously I'm very passionate about and is very apropos for this discussion about Dr. Martin Luther King and celebrating him. And I was starting to think about pulling some things out of what I had to say. But then when the young kids came out and danced to that song, looking back and remembering what we've gone through, knowing where we've come from, I got inspired sitting there. And then when Christopher gave his speech, I was blown away. So I'm going to give you what I've brought here to give you tonight. Okay? All right. First of all, it's an honor to speak at this event tonight, and I will tell you, this is the most important speech I think I've ever given, and I've given a lot of them. But to be able to speak at a Martin Luther King event is a special event in my life, and I don't take it lightly. It's very important. I know that it's a time where we need to be prepared to inspire, and I hope you leave here inspired when I'm finished speaking to you today. So 8 years ago, I probably wouldn't have used the label activist when I described myself. But over the last 7 or 8 years of my life, I've had a change, an epiphany, a change that caused me to add that title amongst the other titles that I have and things that I call myself. I'm an activist. And I think when I'm finished, you're going to realize that you guys are a little bit of an activist too, okay? So the cause of social justice and equity has resonated so deep in me over the last 7 or 8 years of my life that I claim it as a call on my life to make sure that I promote in everything I do equity and justice for everybody that I encounter. And I hope you do too. And many of us have done things like defended the cause of others and spoken out against wrong because it was right, it was the right thing to do, or because we were taught to do it. But most of us, when we've done that, we haven't realized that it's just not something to do. It's our responsibility to defend the cause of justice. So today, I'm going to speak to you about defending the cause of justice, standing up for others, and adding this action to your life purpose. So I titled this speech, Dr. King Spoke and Stood for Justice and Civil Rights. What do you stand for? As an activist, we know that his plight was to achieve equality for African Americans. But if you really read his work and his followings, you realize that his true goal was much larger than that, and it was to achieve acceptance for all people, regardless of the race or nationality. He clearly established his purpose as an activist very early in his life, and here are a few things that happened with him in his life. So we know that at the age of 26, Dr. King led the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott. By 27, he helped to found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and he became the president of that. By the age of 34, he led the 1963 March on Washington, where he delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. And at 35, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through nonviolence. His purpose was set very early in life like Christopher's. Is set very early in life. He maintained his stance on justice and equality even when people called him a radical. And even when he was listed on the FBI watch list, he never stood down from his cause for justice and equality. He knew that the call to be an activist was risky, but he still did it. For most of us, we don't figure out our call in life or our purpose in life until we're halfway through it, or we have something significant to happen in our lives. And sometimes we just fall into it like I believe I did. I think I just fell into this call to be an activist. But it's interesting though, if you trace your life, over your life and look back, there were probably patterns in your life, signs that would indicate what your purpose is. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about something that happened to me when I was 21 and just first started my nursing career. When I was a kid, before that, I was always kind of standing up for the underdog, and I was tall, so I figured, since I'm tall, I should stand up for people who are not as tall as I, and because I was tall, I must look like I'm tough because I'm tall, whether I was or not. So I would do that. But when I first started my nursing career in Denver, Colorado, as the first African-American nurse on my unit, I would come onto my unit, and the African-American kids' hair was unkempt and uncombed, and I remember getting angry about that I look at the other kids and they were neat and clean, and kids whose hair was less coarse than the African-Americans kids' hair was just not kept. And so the activist in my nature wanted to protest and go to my head nurse and say, how could you tolerate this? And this is where you have to know. This will help you to understand if you too are an activist. Because as an activist, you don't always have to protest. And when you protest, you need to have an action behind your protest. So instead of going to my head nurse protesting angrily, I went to her and said, I want to teach everybody how to comb the hair of the African-American kids. I want to teach them how to use a comb and how to use the oil that we use on the hair so that when I come on board, everybody is kept and their hair is combed, and it'll improve their well-being while they're here in the hospital. Little did I know that that was a pattern in my life that would lead me to the supporting of equity and equality, and I've done it ever since. So, if you haven't discovered the patterns in your life and the purpose that they lead to, then please do and stand for them. We may not all be called to be an activist, but we have to all stand for justice and equality. So over the past several years of my life, I've worked with persons whose country of origin, a lot of people whose country of origin is not the United States. And they come from all over the world. And through this experience, I've learned so much about the principles and values of people who view the world as bigger than themselves. And it's been really a fascinating experience for me. Most of the people outside of the United States actually experience the world as a diverse and integrated and dependent universe. Whereas in the United States, often, we view ourselves as independent sometimes of others, and a nation that's independent of others. And too many of us then spend our lives believing that it's important that me and mine are taken care of and that we're safe and all our needs are met. And sometimes that's said and thought to the point that we believe that others outside of this circle that we live in are less important, and it's not our responsibility to take care of them. But that's the farthest from the truth. And Dr. King said this in regards to that. He said, all I'm saying is simply this, that all life is interrelated.